Now, boys and girls, before we start, I need you to help me. There are two things I want you to learn to do, okay? First of all, can you put your hands like this? What does that mean? What do you think that means when you put your... Pretty close. What are you going to do when you put your hands like you're going to pray? Okay, so when we're going to pray, in the story, we put our hands like this. Then I want you to do something else. Put your hands like this and go... Okay? Can you make sounds? Okay, so you watch my hands, and when you see me go like this, get ready, and then when I go, you go. Here we go. Now, folks, I have to tell you, I grew up in Tasmania, which is the little island down the bottom of Australia. And when I was a boy, we lived at a little country town called Cressy. And we were right on the edge of the town, and there were paddocks and farmland all around us. And in one of the paddocks right next to our house, there was a horse. Now, how many of you girls and boys like horses? Do we all like horses? They're beautiful creatures. God did amazing things when he made a horse. And one day I thought, I'm going to ride that horse. Now, this horse was a retired racehorse. Now, racehorses only know 2 speeds. As fast as they can run, and then they stop. That's all they know. Because that's what they're made for, because they're racehorses. So this was a retired racehorse, and I used to feed it carrots across the fence and nice grass. And it got to like me, and we became really good friends. And when I woke up one day, I thought, today's the day. I'm going to ride the horse today. Now, I don't know what his name was because I never asked the farmer. But over the fence I went. The horse came over because he saw me carrying some food, and I gave him a carrot. And he chewed it up, and he looked at me, and I thought, now, how do I get on his back? He's a very big horse. And so I got a box, threw it over the fence, climbed over the fence with the box, and I put the box right alongside the horse. And the horse knew what I was going to do. And he wanted me to ride him too. He was looking forward to a run because he was a racehorse. That's what they love to do, go fast. So I climbed up on the box, and he just stood there. And I leaned over his back like this, and he still stayed there. So I thought, right, it's now or never. So I threw my leg over his back. Now get ready with your hands here, people. I got ready, I threw my legs over the back, and he took 1 step, 2 step, and then he went down the paddock, and I'm riding like crazy. Now, I'm not used to riding horses. I didn't know what to do, so I grabbed hold of his mane, which is, that long hair he's got down the back of his neck. I hang on to that, and we're running down there, and we're going faster and faster, and he's going as fast as he possibly can. This would have been great if I'd had a saddle and if I knew how to ride. But inasmuch as I didn't have either of those things, and I had no bridle. Now, you know what a bridle is, don't you? That's the thing they put around the horse's mouth, and you can steer the horse with it. But if you don't have one of those, you can't steer the horse. The horse doesn't know which way you want him to go. So here we are, galloping down this paddock, and I'm loving it. And the wind's blowing in my hair, and I'm hanging onto his mane. And there's a little bit of a rise, then you go down the hill on this particular paddock. We went over the rise and then down the paddock, and now he's really accelerating. And we're going so fast, and it's fantastic. And then suddenly, I had a look. What's coming up? What do you have at the end of the paddock? A fence. Alistair, there was a fence coming up. I thought, what am I going to do? I can't steer him. I haven't got the bridle. So what would you have done if you'd been me right then? Prayed, help me, Lord. So we're going towards this paddock, towards this fence, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? So I lean forward. We're bouncing along, I'm leaning forward, and I've got a hold of his big head because he had his head up high, and I tried to turn his head so he'd understand I wanted him to go round. But he didn't get the message. He didn't understand what I wanted him to do. So we're still going towards the fence. If you were me, what would you have done? You saw the fence coming up. You knew you were going to crash into the fence, so what would you do? Help me, somebody. What would you do? Jump. And that's exactly what I did. I threw myself off the horse. Now, I was young. I was about 13 or 14. Very agile, just as well. Did a 2-point landing on my feet, but the problem was the rest of me wanted to keep going. And so I went tumbling down the paddock and shook my head. I was fine, got back up, and the horse trotted up beside me and gave me a funny look as if to say, "What happened to you?" Because he must have seen the fence coming up after I bailed out, and he just stopped. So anyhow, he trotted back up to the box. He wanted to do it again. So I thought, well, yeah, let's do that. So I trotted up to the box, and I stood up there, stood on the box, and he stood right alongside the box. And what would you have done if you were me just then? What would you have done? What do you think you should have done? Pray. I should have prayed right then. Well, leaned on the horse's back, threw my leg over. He took one step. You ready? One step, two step, and what did he do? Down the paddock he went. I was ready for him this time. Over the brow of the hill and down the hill on the other side, and we're really going fast. And he was really flat out having the time of his life, and I was having the time of my life. Now, I knew the fence was coming up, and I had it all worked out. I was going to hold his face again, and I was going to push it a lot harder so that it would turn his head around, and then he'd know that I wanted him to turn. So, down the other side, and we're really hammering down the paddock. And so I lean forward as I see the fence coming up, and I push his face really hard this time, but he doesn't get the message. And so we're still hammering towards the fence. I thought, well, there's only one thing to do. What was that? Jump! So I threw myself off the horse again. Perfect landing on my feet, tumbled down the paddock. And it's amazing what you can get away with when you're young, folks. Don't try this at home, by the way. And picked myself up. Horse came and trotted alongside me. And he went back up to the box. So I thought, oh, well, why not? Back up to the box we go. And this is where I made my fatal mistake. Now, what would you have done if you'd been me before you got up on that box? What would you have done? Pray. That's what we should have done. All right, so I threw my leg over the horse's back. He took one step, two step, then what did he do? Down the paddock we went, over the brow of the hill, down the other side. And it was time to do something. Once again, I tried to turn his head. It didn't work, and there was only one thing to do. But trouble was, just before I threw myself off the horse, I began to slip. Now, a horse's back is pretty slippery. I don't know how I managed to last that long. And I began to slip, and instead of throwing myself off and being in control of what happened, I fell like a sack of potatoes on the ground, thump. Oh, and I couldn't move. My leg hurt, and I couldn't get up. Nothing serious, don't worry. And I was feeling, oh no, what will I do? I can't get up. I must have damaged something. And right then, guess who came out the back door of the house, our house next door to the paddock? Dad. He didn't see any of the great landings I did. He just saw me fall like a sack of potatoes. And he had this really worried look on his face. And I thought, oh, I better get up then, hadn't I? Seeing as he's looking so worried, so I struggled to my feet and limped up. And Dad said, what were you doing, riding that horse? I said, well, I wanted to ride it. He said, why didn't you go and ask the farmer if you could borrow a saddle? And I said, well, that's a good idea. So I plucked up the courage. Now, I was a very shy little boy. And it was really a big thing for me to do to go and talk to this farmer. So I went across to the farmhouse and I knocked on the door, and the farmer came out. Yes, boy, what would you like? I said, I wonder if I could have a ride on your horse, please. Oh, he said, boy, you'd never handle that horse. Closed the door, and that was the end of the matter. Now, so I never did get to ride it on it with a saddle, but I want to just remind you, kids, of something. Before you do anything, doesn't matter if it's something hard to do, something easy to do, particularly if it's something a bit risky, what should we always do? What should we do? Pray. Pray is the thing to do. And just ask Jesus to help you to do it well and just keep you safe while you do this. And if you do ride a horse, make sure you get a saddle and bridle. Okay, let's go back to our seats.